Forgotten City, Chapter 19. Kobe felt disembodied as they climbed into the elevator like he was a ghost. The guard, called Krenner, was watching him with barely concealed hostility. Melanie was beside him, tapping something in a tablet. Asha was there too. She had insisted on coming. The elevator climbed, and Kobe tried to clear his head. He wasn't sure what to think, even how to think. In the space of a day, the world had tipped upside down, and every time he thought he might have found some equilibrium, another earthquake shook him off his feet. The elevator arrived and the doors opened. "Are you ready, Kobe?" asked Melanie. He nodded. Level 108 was completely sterile, the walls bright white with airlocks and keypad doorways. Wards on either side had glass viewing windows and contained empty beds and large arrays of medical equipment. In one, a scientist in a hazmat suit was spraying some sort of chemical into the air. A doctor in a lab coat sat at a desk making notes on a screen. He looked up, eyeing Kobe quizzically. "How's Dr. Hales doing?" asked Melanie. "As we expected," said the doctor. "The prognosis hasn't changed." "Is there no way to make him better?" asked Kobe. The doctor glanced at Melanie, then said, "The waste had been cleared from his system. We're keeping the quarantine as a precaution only, but the patient carried the toxic chemical on and off for almost 13 years. Melanie put her arm on Kobe's shoulder softly. The anti-waste drugs he formulated knocked the contagion back, but each time the damage was already done. It was always going to be a losing battle. "But he's cured. The guy said so. The waste's nullified." "I'm sorry, but this time he won't pull through," said Melanie. "His organs are shutting down. We're making him comfortable, but that's all we can do." "Where is he?" said Kobe. "Room 6, the last room on the left," said the doctor before turning to Melanie. "Come this way, Kobe," said Melanie. Kobe set off, a step behind the director, followed by Asha. At room 6, Kobe looked through the glass. Waves of emotion almost floored him, buckling his legs and making his face crumple involuntarily. The body on the bed looked more like a corpse than a living thing. Hale's face was gaunt, with sharp cheekbones under paper-thin gray skin. His eyes were closed, the ridges of the sockets pronounced. A blanket had been pulled up to his chest, which was covered in various wired pads, and his bare bony arms were free, with drips feeding into each. His mouth, ventilator inserted, hung open, and only a few strands of hair remained. He looked 100 years old. On a table in the room, a Polaroid was propped up against a vase of plastic flowers. The photo Claus must have found with Hales. Unlike the other yearbook photos, Hales was in this one, wrestling Kobe as the camera timer went off. Two laughing faces, how things used to be. Kobe put his hands to the glass. Despite everything he'd learned, all the deception and lies, all he wanted to do was be with the man who raised him. As well as the IV stands, there were several wheeled monitors behind the bed and some sort of pumping mechanism. Kobe realized he was crying, but he didn't care. "Dad," he said, fingers pressed to the glass. "No, Jonathan." "I'll leave you to it," said Melanie. "Take as long as you need." She left the room. "Do you want me to leave too?" asked Asha. "No, you could stay here," Kobe paused. "I want you to." He sat by Hale's bedside for he didn't know how long. He couldn't decide whether he was angry. As soon as a wave of fury crashed over him at the sheer scale of the lies, it passed, leaving his emotions awash in a confusion of memory and self-pity. He thought how utterly different life would be if he had been raised here, and he kept returning to just how precarious and deadly an existence it had been at the school, yet how normal it had felt at the time. Compared to the sanitized spaces of Heel Home, they'd been living in the Stone Age, scraping by, always hungry or scared or worried about the future or whatever new menace they might come across. But Kobe missed it. Kobe reached out and took the Polaroid from the table. He placed it in the pocket of his jumpsuit. He didn't know why he wanted to keep it. He only knew that it was the last remaining object from his old life, and the idea of it being thrown in the trash didn't seem right. For good or bad, Kobe couldn't entirely erase his past, but he could move on from it. He had to, eventually. Kobe raised up a hand and placed it on Hale's arm. It felt skeletal. Tears dripped down Kobe's cheeks. "Goodbye, Jonathan." Whether it was a coincidence or whether the man on the bed had actually felt Kobe's touch, Jonathan Hale's eyelids fluttered and his skull-like head turned sideways. The eyes that locked on his and widened were brown, without a hint of yellow. As they did, the patient jerked in bed and the heart rate monitor began to spike. An alarm beeped, flashing red on one of the monitors. "What's wrong?" said Kobe. "Help him." A moment later, the doctor came running back, zipping up a hazmat suit. Behind Kobe, Asha edged closer too. The doctor tapped in a code and the airlock opened. Inside, he pulled on the helmet, then entered the room. Jonathan Hales was convulsing on the bed, and one of his drips tore free. His leg almost toppled an IV stand. The doctor worked quickly, grabbing a syringe and injecting Hale's shoulder. Slowly, Hale's spasms ceased, but as they did, he was reaching for the ventilator tube, as if trying to pull it free. The doctor gripped his arm and straightened it. In a few more seconds, the patient's eyes fluttered closed again. "Come on, we should leave," said Asha. She gave Kobe's arm a tug, and after a moment more, when the heart monitor dropped again to a regular beat, Kobe let himself be led away. He knew it would be the last time he would ever see his father, the man he thought was his father, alive again.